The Idries Shah Foundation podcast. Practical Psychology for Today. Featuring the works of Idries Shah, voiced by David Ault. Welcome to the Idries Shah Foundation podcast. In this edition of the podcast, we will hear selections from Wisdom of the Idiots by Idries Shah. This audio is made available by the Idries Shah Foundation. The Sponge of Troubles. It is related that for many centuries the tomb of Boland Ashian cured sicknesses, granted wishes, benefited all who visited it. It was known as the Sponge of Troubles. The shrine was situated near the small town of Murghzar in Iran, and here Faisal Nadim worked as a cook in the ashkhana or restaurant for 20-odd years. Faisal would never go to the shrine, but the travellers who entered his kitchen and spent time with him as he worked provided the line of Sufi illuminates called the Nadimis, and the visitors to the tomb were never celebrated as in any way sagacious, except among the ignorant. Someone asked the sage Khorram Ali why pious pilgrims were not transformed by their attendance at a place of such miracles, and why frequenters of a kitchen should become Sufi saints. Khorram answered, "A sponge sucks up water which is not needed, but it may also prevent, according to circumstances, useful work. It is quite insensitive, whatever merits you attribute to it. A cook knows the measure of ingredients and how to make them digestible. A cook may need a sponge to eliminate whatever stands in his way, such as dirty water. Only the stupid, looking only at the sponge, would imagine that it is working by its own volition." The Crystal Fish. A young man, having done a certain boatman a kindness, was presented by him with a tiny crystal fish. He lost it, and in his despair at losing such a rare and beautiful object, was incensed when he saw another man, around whose neck was a cord on which hung a crystal fish. The youth took the man to court and had him convicted of theft. At the last moment, when asked if he had anything to say before being conducted to prison, the man said, "Ask any boatman of this country. We all have such emblems, and mine is my own. It does not belong to this youth. I have 2 eyes and a mouth too, but they are not his either." "Why did you not speak up before?" asked the magistrate of the boatman. "Because there is more merit for all mankind if the truth is arrived at by the exercise of sense by all parties from the beginning, than if one has to prove something which might just, after all, not be capable of proof." "We must all learn, however," remarked the judge. "Alas," said the boatman, "if learning is considered to be dependent upon the production of proof, we only have 1/2 of knowledge, and we are surely lost." The Kishtiwanis, to which school this boatman belonged, were noted for their habit of emphasizing that people spend most of their time either jumping to conclusions, or else taking no notice at all of facts. The Seal-Bearer. Very soon after the death of Maulana Bahuddin Naqshband, a ragged man arrived near his burial place and demanded, "Take me to the Khalifa," or deputy. The Khalifa was not there. He said, "Let Bibi Jan, Maulana's widow, identify me." Everyone was nonplussed by the stranger, and those who remained of the Maulana's following did not know what to say or do. The wanderer said, "No Khalifa, no understanding. So I shall show you this, which even a man-donkey should know." He produced the seal of Bahuddin Naqshband. Now this man was treated with honor, but he asked to be taken to the wall against the hill of Tilaju. He threw down a part of that wall and told the men present to dig out its foundations. Then he removed certain objects buried there and said, "These are for me. They would have been for the disciples, if they had been adepts." Someone asked, "Why did the disciples not get them?" He said, "El-Shah told them to dig out the foundations of the wall, but instead they built the wall on top. So the wall will eventually fall, and the priceless objects here would have been lost. The idleness of the murids, or disciples, in manual labor, and their superiority in imagination, has caused their negation in the spiritual realm." A murid asked, "May we know of those who are not like us, for we crave knowledge?" The mysterious dervish said, "Those who could know already know. Those who are left are too late to know. They therefore satisfy themselves with having been near El-Shah. But it would be better if they were to disband. Otherwise they will merely repeat the names and formulae of El-Shah, and people will be led astray, imagining that this is Sufism." Someone said, "Which enlightened one are you? Which wali, which abdal? Will you not stay with us?" He answered, "I am the lowest servant of the masters, the Khwajagan. A servant can only stay where he can serve his master's commands. I cannot carry out the service of humility in the company of arrogance." Someone asked, "How can we reduce our arrogance?" He said, "You can reduce it by realizing that you are not worthy to be representatives of the teaching of El-Shah. The unworthy are doubly incapacitated. They lead themselves astray by imagining that they are studying the way. They lead others astray by pretending to teach them, even by implication. This is not study. This is not teaching. Where there is no representative, imitation of his position is equal to usurpation. Usurpation destroys the soul." Full. An astronomer who was vain and full of his knowledge went on his travels and visited Kushyar the sage, teacher of Avicenna. But Kushyar would have nothing to do with him and declined to teach him in any way. The astronomer was taking his leave in sadness when Kushyar said, "Your belief that you know so much has the effect of making you equal to a container completely full of water. Because of that, like the vessel, you are unable to admit any more. But the fullness is the repletion of vanity, and the fact is that you are really empty, no matter how you feel." Voice in the night. A voice whispered to me last night, "There is no such thing as a voice whispering in the night." Haidar Ansari. Perception. It is recorded that someone said to the great philosopher Sadi, "I wish for perception so that I shall become wise." Sadi said, "Perception without wisdom is worse than nothing at all." He was asked, "How can that be?" Sadi said, "As in the case of the vulture and the kite. The vulture said to the kite, 'I have far better eyesight than you. Why, I can see a grain of wheat down there on the ground while you see nothing at all.' The two birds plummeted down to find the wheat, which the vulture could see and the kite could not. When they were quite near the ground and the kite saw the wheat, the vulture continued his dive and swallowed the wheat. And then he collapsed, for the wheat was poisoned." Scraps. The scraps from the meal of the emir, are larger than the gifts of halwa from the merchant. Timur Fazil. The Golden Fly. There was once a man called Salah, who knew right from wrong, and who knew what should be done and what should not be done, and who knew much of book learning. He knew so much, in fact, that he had been appointed to be the personal assistant to the Mufti Zafrani, an eminent jurisconsult and judge. But Salah did not know everything, and even in the things he did know, he did not always act in accordance with his knowledge. One day, when he had set aside his glass of sweet juice, a tiny, shimmering golden fly settled on the rim and took a sip. Then the same thing happened the next day, and the next, until the fly grew in size and Salah could easily see him. But the fly had grown so slowly that Salah hardly noticed him at all. Finally, after several weeks during which Salah had been deep in study of a knotty legal problem, he looked up and realized that the fly seemed much larger than it should be. He brushed it away. The fly at once rose into the air, circled the glass, and flew away. But it came back. When Salah's vigilance was relaxed, the fly would swoop down, sit on the rim of the glass, and drink as much as it could. As the days went by, the fly became larger and larger, and as it drank more and more, it also started to look different. First Salah flicked it away. Then he found that he had to take a stick to hit it with. Sometimes, too, the fly started to look to him like something with a semi-human form. It was, of course, a jinn, and not a fly at all. Finally Salah shouted at the fly, and lo, it answered, saying, "I do not take so very much of your drink, and besides, I am beautiful, am I not?" Salah was first amazed, then afraid, and in the end completely confused. He started to derive some pleasure from the visits of the fly, even though it was drinking some of his sherbet. He watched as the fly danced. He thought about it a great deal. He did less and less work, and as the fly became larger, he found himself feeling weaker and weaker. Salah was often in trouble with the Mufti, and so he pulled himself together and decided to make an end of the fly. Summoning up all his resolution, he hit it a violent blow, and it flew away, saying, "You have wronged me, for I only want to be your friend, but I shall go if that is what you want." Salah at first felt that he had got rid of the fly for good and all. He said to himself, "I have beaten it, and that proves that I am more powerful than it, be it man or jinn, fly or not." Then, when Salah had convinced himself that the whole matter was at an end, the fly appeared again. It had grown to an enormous size, and it descended from the ceiling like a shimmering lake in the form of a man. 2 huge hands reached out and grasped Salah's throat. When the Mufti came to look for his assistant, he was lying strangled on the floor. The side wall of the house had collapsed with the jinn's passing, and all that there was to mark his enormousness was a handprint on the whitewash, as large as the side of an elephant. Tavern Pledge. It may be said they came in vain. Let it not be that they came in vain. We leave this, the bequest, to you. We finished what we could, we left the rest to you. Remember, this is work entrusted. Remember, beloved, we shall meet again. Dervish Song. This podcast is copyright 2016, the Idries Shah Foundation.